surprised to hear this, but I felt the presence of God in my life in a very unique way when I was about 4 years old. And I'd like to attach it to, for me, statistically, I can say I wasn't supposed to be here. I was born to teenage parents in Newark, New Jersey in 1978.
How's the Jersey in the building?
What's up, York City? What's up, York City? And I think, you know, being raised by my grandparents, and for the grace of God, they stepped in to help raise me along with my mother. And that changed the trajectory of my life. But I had a grandmother who was not only a praying grandmother. I said to Dr. Dharius in the back, she was a feet washing, a foot washing, you know, like oil on your forehead all the time, anointing type grandmom. And I was like, girl, too much. But at the time, but I felt the presence of God because I knew that if it were not for her prayers and for her presence in my life, that I would not have been able to go forward. And so at 4, I knew. Now the reality of what Dr. Dharius said is like those seasons, you don't know what to do with that. And like I said, the calling for everyone is there, but it's a different calling. And so it's about understanding how to use your gifts, your talents, your treasures, what God has given you to really bless others. And I think that that's a direct connection that I'm just learning to stand into right now. And I'll be 45 in January, so it's changing daily.
I love it. And I love the part you said about praying grandmothers. How many people here got praying mamas and praying grandmothers? You know their prayers have covered you out in these Atlanta streets out there. You know, it's like, it gets real. You know, you think about all of the different ways that the church has changed, but we all come from foundations of Black men, Black women, Black people of the church. Really, if you really think about it, the church is where most of our ancestors learned how to read in the first place. The Bible is the first book that people used to be able to sneak and read. It's the only book we had access to. And so I think that the church in many ways, and we're talking about the future of belief. The past 2 years have changed how we church. The building became something we couldn't go into because of COVID. It just triggers me every time when you say it. But what do you guys think, especially since the building, you know, doesn't really matter to how we worship? I mean, I think it matters, but it's changed. What do you think the future of belief and worshiping and communing with God looks like since so much has changed in these past 2 years?
Yeah, you know, this is not, I don't just say this because it's like religious. To me, it's right. It's a worldview. I don't know any other healthy way for me to look at tough seasons. And it's this idea that everything that happens isn't good, but God will work everything together for good. He'll bring some good out of everything. So COVID wasn't good, but here's one of the good things that came out of it. It shifted a lot of us from codependency on a building and a preacher to a real dependency on God. And I think that's something that's really healthy spiritually that has come out of the pandemic. I mean, you were sharing with me this IG live that you do every single morning.
Every day.
And that happened during the pandemic. And I'm telling you, it's 168 hours in a week. You can't be spiritually strong depending on that hour and a half, 2 hours, or if you're Pentecostal, it might be 2.5, 3 hours.
3 hours, 4.
That you're in church. So I think I'm kind of optimistic actually. I'm very optimistic about the future of belief because I'm seeing, and I'm not separating the two, but I'm seeing less dependence on churches we've understood it and more dependence on God. And I think that's helpful.
Why I started Morning Mindset with Tai is because, and you said this, Gia, you know, the idea of church for Black people, and this is not just about religion, this is about faith. My girl Ibtihaj was on stage before, you know, who is a devout Muslim. My uncle is Muslim, so I grew up going to the masjid. I have a sister who's Jewish, I went to temple. I had a grandmother who was Pentecostal, so I was in church for 1,000 hours a week, days on end. And then I went to Catholic school. But the reality is I think on the heels of the pandemic is that we've had a global conscious reckoning. And what we've realized in that is that we are more the same than different. And what is the sameness and the oneness that really there's but one God. So whether or not you call God Jehovah Jireh, whether or not you call God Allah or Jesus or God, there's but one. And in that, there has been a desire for us to connect with the God in each of us that resides in each of us. And so I think the future of belief for us, and then you layer that, quite frankly, with what this generation of revolt is doing, right? We're talking about Generation Z and A, I think is coming back. Is it A? Or A Alpha? I don't know.
I'm still learning about Z.
But whatever the next generation is, I'm a proud Xer over here. But, with that, the idea of connection and understanding humanity. And the reality for me, as a Christian, and I say that proudly, but as a Christian, our humanity is connected to divinity. And so with divinity, whether or not you are, in church or not in church, what we're starting to see is the desire to connect on a human level and understand the uniqueness and the oneness of God that resides in each of us. And so I think the future of belief for us is a connection to wanting to be bold in what we're called to be and who we're called to be and who we're designed to be by God. And so that's my hope and prayer. That is when we know the Spirit is really moving, because I didn't have a plan for this, and I'll be perfectly honest, most mornings, I get up at 5:30 most mornings, but some mornings at 5:30 when I'm up, I don't want to speak. But I realize that is the opportunity for me to share, to connect, and for someone else to be empowered in that moment in their own strength and power.
I love that. Now, apparently when I came out here, I done gotten so happy, I was dancing with B. I sat in the wrong chair, so can we switch, sir?
We're supposed to
That's
switch?
what they done told me in the prompt. The girl, you in the wrong seat. And in Jesus' name, hello.
I'm happy I did right
You got to
today.
get back in your right seat, amen?
Right. I'm happy I did right today, so I got in the right seat. I didn't even know.
You did good.
I didn't even know.
I'm over here in trouble. Okay, so I think it's so interesting to talk about. There's all these articles about how every single year the new generation go to church less and less. They don't have belief systems like traditional belief systems are kind of out of the window, and we're creating our own ways to believe, but it's just not necessarily looking like God. Now, these articles, I don't know all these people that they talk about. Me and my friends, we pray on the phone. But what are your thoughts around that how younger generations may be straying away from the church and starting their own things of belief? What are your thoughts about that?
I got mixed feelings about that.
I want to hear about this.
Yeah,
Let's talk.
I got very mixed feelings about it. All right, so people might find it weird that I say something like this, but this is one of the things I feel. One of the things I feel is this. Someone says, yo, Dharius, how do you actually feel about that as a spiritual leader? How do you feel about that? I'm going to say it depends. I think sometimes people who sit in my seat, our first thought is when people are leaving, that something's wrong with the people. Instead of pausing for a minute and asking ourselves, why don't they want to come?
Well,
a lot of people don't run from what's relevant to them. So if they're running from it, it may mean we haven't done a good enough job of presenting it in a way that deals with the issues that actually matter there. Now,
yes, okay, a point.
So for me, I've been in church my entire life. I'm a church boy. I love the church. I've been in church my entire life. But I remember growing up, and I'm sitting there, and I'm like, it's long. I'm hungry. I'm thirsty. He got something to drink. I want something to drink.
You eat my grandma candy again.
Yeah. If I got to use the bathroom, somebody looking at me when I get up and go to the bathroom.
You just got to put your finger up.
Yeah.
That's
It's
all.
like, yo, I'm trying to understand what Buddy's saying, but I don't quite, you know what I mean?
And you like, what?
Yeah, and so it wasn't even that part for me. It was just like, sometimes I can feel like, yo.
Getting blessed and fulfilled by what you're saying.
Yeah, I know, it was kind of surprising. It was eye-opening. If somebody say, yo, what did you feel? It was like I felt responsibility. That's what I felt. I felt responsibility because when somebody's like, yo, I'm in China, and and I can't go worship publicly. Or if somebody's like, I'm deployed in the military.
Wow.
And it's hard over here. I'm trying to keep my mind together. I'm wrestling with a long distance relationship, and I trust them, but I kind of don't trust them. Like all of this stuff is like literally going through people's head. They're wondering, yo, am I going to get back home? Am I going to get back home in one piece? And so, just to know, like, yo, people are able to get a spiritual lifeline wherever they are in the world. It just makes me feel responsible. It's like I realize that that every time I get up and I speak, I'm not just speaking to the people that are sitting in the room. I'm speaking to people whose mama's sick. I'm speaking to people who just buried somebody they love. I'm speaking to people who are trying to break through in the industry. And it's all over the world. So I feel like it's made me more caring, more conscious, and I'm just trying to be more responsible.
Doing a good job.
I'm trying.
You're doing it. You're doing it. I have to ask you the same question because I know your views grow. I see people on your live who are the same, tuning in from Brazil, tuning in from different parts of, because I know you travel a lot. You be in London, child, LA, New York. So like, what does that feel like to use technology in this way? Instagram wasn't even around 10 years ago in the way that it is now, and now you have the platform and you use it to do this. So what does that feel like to you? Do you also feel the responsibility to do it?
I feel a deep responsibility, and I must say I'm constantly honored and humbled by it, because when I started Morning Mindset with Tai, and I speak very transparently about this, you know, I was in a space when I moved to LA of a depression that I didn't know was a depression, right? I started, you know, sharing on IG Live and just, you know, coming in and out, not knowing, and people, you know, at first there's 20 people in the room, there's 30 people in the room, there's 100 people in the room, there's 150, then there's 200 people in the room, which is substantial to stay for like 30 minutes. And I'm deeply honored, because what I will say, I did not plan Morning Mindset with Tai. It's something that just evolved, and I think that that's also the beauty and the wonderful presence of God and that calling that I talk about. So, you know, when we talk about faith and spiritual movement, when you're pulled, when God is pulling you to something, you just do it. And I had to really kind of quail my own ego, my own anxiety around it, my own